This is a video on culture. First, the cultures of the origin of business and the development of business. This would be the culture of risk, the culture of investment, the culture of high performance. Unfortunately, these cultures are opposite each other. So if you try to have all three at the same time, you will fail. And so you have to balance among them. Number two is the culture of neurotic businesses, neurotic groups, and the culture of globality. The fact of the matter is that you as a person, your organization and your company and your nation and your gender are partial, incomplete, and biased by when and where you were raised. Uh, most such entities never become aware of all the alternative ways they could have learned and been raised in. And they also become comfortable in these automatic ways that they now are without thinking and effortlessly, and expertly wield these ways that have become automated routines inside them they're unconscious of, and feel like other ways, which are not effortless, which are not unconscious, and not theirs, must be inferior. And rather than consider establishing new routines inside themselves and getting rid of old routines, it's easier to mentally dislike different places and routines. And globality, of course, this is the primary block to globality, the fact that people do not admit that they are piles of heavily practiced expert routines in one culture, and that this is going to make them look like fools and they'll be incompetent in most of the world outside of where they were born. They won't admit this, and therefore, one way or another, they lie and cheat and distort the reality of how much of their old local self they want to try to make work elsewhere in the world. As soon as they admit that they're trying to get 90% of their Karlsruhe, Germany stuff to work in Japan or China or America, or 99% of their Chicago stuff to work in Karlsruhe or Africa or Southeast Asia, then the laughable stupidity of what they are attempting to do becomes apparent, and they have a chance to change and grow. Number three, performance cultures. This is two kinds of performance, the silly little make your numbers thing that CEOs do, and all you have to do is ruin some future numbers and scarf resources from them and make your present numbers. CEOs learn this very early in life, and people are not around 3 years later to figure out that their ruined future was created by that CEO 3 years ago. And so that's trivial. That's the 12-year-old boy's way of making your numbers. Men have a hormone that makes them willing to do that. They will destroy any reality or value for the sake of a present performance target to look superior to another monkey. There's a hormone set that makes men blind and willing to do that. There's another kind of performance, which is really theater performance. This is James March's thing that leaders primarily take credit for luck and avoid credit for bad luck by enacting dramas publicly that make followers identify with them and sympathize with them. This has nothing to do with making the company survive or perform well in markets, but it's a emotional performance before employees that makes the employees feel led without requiring that the employees actually go anywhere. It's called a kind of collusion between leader and follower. If you lead me and make me feel like I'm going somewhere, but don't ask me to actually change or go anywhere, then I will support you as leader. I will follow you. Nowhere. Transplanting across cultures. Transplanting leaders, individual leaders across culture. Translating products across culture. Translating processes and systems across culture generally doesn't happen. It generally fails. Euro Disney compared to Tokyo Disney, for example. Now, you occasionally get lucky out of blind stupidity. So Disney got lucky in Tokyo Disneyland, and by absolutely luck, they implanted Disney in a culture that was fascinated with an immature population and everything pretty and cute and nothing serious except elites and Todai. And so Disney transplanted well to that kind of disempowered population, where cuteness is the best you can hope for because you're not going to get a serious role in society. The elites keep all that for themselves. Europe is quite different than that atmosphere, however. So when they transplanted it to Europe, they lost their shirt. Uh, so luck will often cause you to wrongly think that your product translates everywhere in the world. How can you be that stupid? That something that translates easily in Japan is going to fit France? I mean, this is more than This is gargantuan stupidity on the part of the leadership of Disney. And I don't think it's just the chairman who's a moron, although the top moron usually is the chairman. This is the vice president morons and the department chief morons, because they each had to translate their function into this totally different environment, and they each fail. Or Lincoln Electric finding out after it establishes several European factories that its piecework pay system, which is so great in U.S. performance terms, is against the law in all of those countries in Europe. And then the workforce of Lincoln loses money for years because of this. Managers didn't bother to imagine that the laws in Switzerland and Italy and France are different than Ohio laws. Wow, what a shock. How stupid can you be? Uh, so there is a way to translate across cultures. You look at supports and hindrances to the culture of a product or a system in the culture it originated in. And then you look at supports and hindrances in the culture you're transplanting it to, and look at how those four things are different. And you learn to take tactics for supports that are in the origin culture, but they're not in the target culture, and tactics for hindrances in the origin culture that you're missing those hindrances in the target culture. So you can be a little bolder. And then hindrances in the target culture that weren't there in the origin culture, you're going to have to handle them. And then supports in the target culture that weren't there in the origin culture, you're going to have to take advantage of them. Extreme product extrapolations. This is the easiest way to teach moronic managers, males who are afraid of emotion, who have bad social skill, and their idea of a social skill is to spend 25 years suppressing themselves and manipulating ruthlessly everybody they meet so that they can be leader. And then the minute they become leader, they reward themselves by turning psychopath and no longer listening to anybody until they self-destruct, according to Grint's book on leadership. Extreme product extrapolations is how to get people that stupid to participate in realizing that this culture is very different than my culture, and I'm going to have to adapt to it. It's bigger and longer than I am, and it's not going to change because of me. I'm going to have to change and adapt to it. And what you do is you take a group of executives and you give them some money, and you run around and have them buy products and services in a market, foreign market that you could never buy or sell in your own market. And then you get dozens of people doing this. They have show dinners at night where they present to each other the strange products and services they found that are all unsellable, unbuyable in their home market. And then they build a model of what consumers and markets are like in this foreign place that makes these products successful and profitable here, even though they would be impossible in my own market and home. And then they invent a new product in teams, a new product that meets all of those dimensions of the model they built. And then in a dinner, they present and compete for the winning version of that new product. And you can, in 2 or 3 days of this workshopping, take, with great, wonderful positive morale, take a group of bozos who do the Euro, who are well 100% set on doing the kind of Euro Disney, Lincoln Electric, suicidal stupidity thing, and get them thinking, and actually get these men out of their little male hormone dreams of power and being top monkey, and looking at adapting to this very different landscape of emotions and desires and wishes and dreams over here in this foreign market. Culture, assess, and fix events. There are 10 aspects of culture. Culture powers, culture traits, culture operations on cultures, culture dimensions, social processes where those dimensions appear or don't appear. And each of those has got dozens or a couple of dozen components. You've got to know what culture you're in. And you've got to know where it's moving you toward your goals and hindering you getting your goals. And then you have to choose the right operations on the right traits of the culture, on the right dimensions, showing up in the right social processes to get the culture to support what you need to support. And simply making this culture stronger or making it more varied or making it looser isn't going to do it, because the culture is just far too sophisticated and complicated for those simple, blunt instrument approaches to get you anywhere. The culture of devices and business practices. Total quality was a particular culture. It turns out it's an anti-culture to ordinary Japanese management culture. It's the opposite of Japanese management culture. Stupid Americans think it's a Japanese culture because it originated in Japan. Quite the contrary. The smart Japanese realized there were flaws in their management culture and designed total quality to correct those flaws. So it's an anti-culture in Japan. Silicon Valley is American. Most people think, oh, no, 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 no. Silicon Valley is an anti-culture in America. It's an anti-East Coast, anti-blue suit, anti-Harvard MBA psychopathic greeds on Wall Street, anti-MIT elite math snobbery. And it won. It had 8 times more contribution than Wall Street to the American economy. 7 times more contribution to GDP than MIT. It works. It's an anti-culture within America that is better than normal East Coast American culture by far. 8 times better. Cultures of genders, errors, and venturers. This is the fact that everything we see comes to us drenched in hormones. And so these unbelievably emotional men writhing with the male emotions of competition and victory and defeat all day, every day, think that they are professional and rational and pretend that they are because they all collude to do it together. And since most businesses are 99% men, they can get away with it. But if you have a brain and you go into a business, it looks like a monkey's in a zoo. And you just sit there and insult the status of anybody and watch them go bananas for 3 days with revenge because they're just out of control. The poor little monkey is no longer top monkey in someone's opinion, and it drives him crazy. That's not a brain thinking, that's hormones thinking. And if you want to know how to improve a corporation, stop being hormonal, or make your brain overrule your gonads. Definitions and uses of culture. People define culture for sneaky purposes. And so they'll change definitions in the same conversation depending upon what they want you to do for them. And so you can't just go around trusting people's definition of culture because they're different, they have a different view. No, they have a different view than themselves at 9 in the morning and 9:15 in the morning, depending on who they're talking to and what they want. So the uses of culture and the definitions of culture go hand in hand, and don't let people separate them for you. It's a trick. Operations on and tools for culture. And this is, you can't do an operation on a culture without a tool for doing that. You can't found a new culture without a tool for creating a great emotional intensity and trust between people. You can't make a culture stronger or looser or more adaptive without tools for doing that. So you need to both learn the operation and the corresponding tools at the same time. Traits and dimensions of culture. Traits are things like strength, weakness, looseness, tightness, adaptability, stability. And then dimensions of culture are things like communal, individual, sin, the world is faulty, the world is perfect. These dimensions that allow you to easily differentiate among all the variety that you see in the ways people live and work. Traits and dimensions are both ways to distinguish cultures. Traits are dimensions that have practical power for us, is all. They're just particular traits that have practical power for us. And then dimensions are traits that don't have immediate practical power, but that influence how we do things. Then we have types and social processes of culture. There are types of culture, and like venturesome cultures and risk-avertive cultures. There are social processes, economics, politics, culture, and change processes. And in any trait of a culture, any dimension of a culture can appear in any social process and not in others. So Japanese are very individualistic in academia and very communal everywhere else. Powers and high performances of culture. This is the big payback stuff. There are 9 powers of culture, and you may not even be using 7 of them because you're not aware that they're there. Your opponent may be using them, and then you're in big trouble. And then there's the traits of high performance cultures. You can move a non-high performance culture to high performance if you know where you're going. And there are 64 dimensions of it, mostly researched by a guy, Vail and James March in Stanford. Vail in University of North Carolina and James March in Stanford University. If you know what those traits are, you can do the tools and the operations on aspects of a culture that then move you in those directions.